The year was 1994, and the small Italian town of Castel di Vento lived in a rhythm so predictable it could lull even tragedy to sleep. The church bell rang every morning at 7. The bar on Via Roma served espresso to the same 10 faces. And every Sunday, the Ferry family gathered on their old wooden terrace overlooking the River Po, where the water whispered stories to anyone who would listen. But one cold February morning, that whisper turned into silence, because Elena Ferri, the youngest daughter of Pietro and Lucia, didn't come home. Elena was 22. Everyone in town described her as the girl with the sun in her smile. She worked part-time at a small flower shop near the piazza and was studying literature at the University of Parma. Her world was small but bright, filled with books, laughter, and dreams far bigger than the sleepy town she called home. That morning she left her house to deliver flowers to a customer on the outskirts of town, a routine delivery she had done dozens of times before. But somewhere between the shop and the bridge that crossed the old river road, she disappeared. Her bicycle was found leaning against the guardrail of the San Giusto Bridge, one wheel still spinning when a truck driver spotted it around 10:30 a.m. Her basket lay overturned, flowers scattered across the frozen grass, yellow tulips, Elena's favorite. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints, no blood, just the faint echo of something wrong, something that didn't belong in a town where everyone thought they knew everyone else. By noon, half of Castel di Vento had gathered near the bridge. Police cars, volunteers, and journalists swarmed the area. Pietro Ferri stood in silence as the local carabinieri dragged the river for hours, pulling up nothing but weeds and silt. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stared at the water, as if waiting for it to return his daughter. Days turned into weeks. The investigation found no trace of Elena. Her boyfriend, Marco Rinaldi, was questioned repeatedly. He told police they had argued the night before, something about her wanting to leave town and study abroad. But he insisted he had nothing to do with her disappearance. His alibi held, he was at work at the garage all morning. Then there was Signor Valli, the old florist who claimed to see Elena near the bridge talking to a man in a dark green Fiat Uno. But his memory was unreliable, clouded by age and whiskey. The police noted it but couldn't confirm it. No car, no witnesses, no evidence. By summer, the case went cold. Pietro Ferri refused to accept it. He printed missing posters himself, nailed them to every pole, every church gate, every gas station from Bologna to Milan. He appeared on local TV, begging anyone with information to come forward. But years passed and people stopped looking. Life moved on, except for Pietro. He'd visit the bridge every morning, sitting on the same bench, waiting. The locals called him Il Padre Fantasma, the Ghost Father, the man whose eyes always looked past the horizon, searching for someone who would never return. Lucia Ferri, Elena's mother, withdrew into silence. She stopped cooking, stopped going to church. Her laughter, once the sound of warmth in that house, faded until all that was left was the tick of the kitchen clock. By 2001, she was gone too, a quiet death from a failing heart that Pietro blamed not on illness, but on the emptiness that had settled in their home. Time kept moving. The bridge aged. Moss crept over the stone pillars. Teenagers who hadn't been born when Elena disappeared told ghost stories about her. Some said she had run away. Others whispered that she had been taken by someone from out of town. Maybe a truck driver, maybe worse. The police archives still kept her file, but it gathered dust like the forgotten pages of a tragedy no one wanted to reopen. Then, in 2022, almost 28 years later, something changed. A flood hit the Emilia-Romagna region that winter, the worst in decades. The River Po swelled and tore through its banks, carrying debris for miles. When the waters finally receded, a park ranger named Luca Bernardi was inspecting the damaged areas under the old San Giusto Bridge. Among the collapsed roots of an ancient willow, he noticed something that didn't belong, a hollow space inside the tree, just big enough for a human body. Inside, half buried in the soil, was a fragment of bone. At first, Luca thought it was an animal. But when the forensic team arrived, what they unearthed sent a chill through the entire town. A partial skeleton, female, with remnants of a floral bracelet still wrapped around one wrist. The same kind of bracelet that Elena Ferry used to make by hand. News spread fast. Reporters returned. Satellite trucks lined the bridge road again, just like in 1994. The ferry house, long abandoned, became a place of pilgrimage for those who remembered her face. Pietro, now 84, was brought to the site in a wheelchair. When he saw the dig team lifting the remains, he whispered only 4 words. "I told you so." DNA confirmed it within a week. The remains belonged to Elena Ferry. But the discovery only opened more questions than it answered. How did she end up beneath that bridge, just meters from where her bicycle was found? Who put her there? And why had no one found her all these years? The answers would soon come, from a forgotten police report, a missing vehicle, and a man who had been hiding in plain sight for nearly 3 decades, because the truth about what happened to Elena Ferry wasn't buried by time. It was buried by silence. The discovery of Elena Ferry's remains shattered the fragile peace that Castel di Vento had built over 28 years. For most residents, she had become a memory, a ghostly photograph on a bulletin board, a story whispered to new generations. But now, the ghost had returned in flesh and bone, forcing everyone to remember what they tried so hard to forget. The investigation was reopened under Detective Serena Volpi, a young but relentless investigator from Parma known for her precision and empathy. She arrived in Castel di Vento with a box of files from the 1994 case, yellowed pages that smelled of dust and failure. The first thing she noticed was how little had been done back then. No DNA testing, no surveillance records, no digital footprint, just assumptions, dead ends, and a community too trusting for its own good. When Serena visited the site under the bridge, she stood quietly for a long time. The willow tree swayed in the cold wind, its roots twisting like veins over the earth that had hidden Elena for decades. "She was right here," Serena whispered. "All this time." The thought haunted her. How close they had been. How many times someone must have walked over that bridge, never realizing that the truth was beneath their feet. The forensic report revealed new details. Elena's skull showed a fracture at the back, blunt force trauma, likely from a heavy object. There were no signs of drowning. She had been killed before being concealed. But the most chilling clue came from a small object found beside the bones, a rusted keychain with the logo of a local construction company, Impresa Valli e Figli. That name hadn't appeared in the old police reports. Yet to Serena, it was immediately familiar. Alberto Valli, the company's founder, was the same man who had told police in 1994 that he saw Elena speaking to a stranger near the bridge. He was 73 now, retired, still living in a farmhouse just outside town. Back then, police dismissed him as a drunk old witness. But now, his company's keychain had been found buried with Elena's remains. Serena requested the old witness statements. As she read through them late at night in the local station, she noticed something unsettling. The handwriting of the officer who took Valli's statement was shaky, and several lines were crossed out. It almost looked like someone had edited the report, specifically the parts mentioning the color of the car and the timeline of when Valli said he saw her. The next morning, Serena visited him. Valli's house was filled with relics of another era, old photographs, medals, and dust-covered trophies from local fairs. He answered the door slowly, leaning on a cane, his eyes pale and unfocused. "Elena Ferry," Serena said gently. "You remember her, don't you?" His jaw tightened, a small tremor in his hand. "Of course," he murmured. "Poor girl. I told the police everything back then." She placed the rusted keychain on the table between them. "Then explain why this was found with her body." For a moment, the old man didn't move. Then he laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. "That's impossible," he said. "I lost that keychain years before she disappeared." His voice faltered. "You don't think I think," Serena interrupted softly. "You know more than you told us." Valli looked away, his eyes drifting toward the window. "There was someone else," he finally whispered. "Someone who used to work for me, a driver. He was there that morning." The name came out like a confession. Giorgio Lazzari. Serena dug through the archives and found him, a laborer who worked for Impresa Valle Figli until 1995, when he abruptly moved away. No criminal record, no follow-up, just gone. But as Serena traced his file, she realized something terrifying. He hadn't gone far. He had simply changed towns, changed names, and now he lived less than 50 kilometers away, in Reggio Emilia, working as a mechanic under the name Gianni Rizzi. It took days to obtain a warrant, but when the police searched his garage, they found a faded photograph pinned to the wall behind a toolbox. It was a photo of the river, the San Giusto Bridge, taken in winter. Below it, written in shaky handwriting, "Only the river remembers." That's when everything started falling into place. Serena discovered that in 1994, Giorgio had been assigned to a construction project repairing the guardrails near the bridge. The same week, Elena vanished. Witnesses recalled seeing his green Fiat parked near the site, the same car that old Valley had mentioned, but at the time, the police dismissed it because the company had official authorization to work there. Nobody had thought to question the workers individually. A new forensic sweep of the bridge area uncovered metal fragments buried deeper than the original dig. Among them was a corroded piece of jewelry, a gold earring shaped like a small leaf. Elena's best friend, Maria Dotti, confirmed it was part of the pair she had gifted Elena for her birthday just days before she disappeared. The evidence was growing, but Serena needed a confession. So she arranged a quiet meeting at the Reggio Emilia police headquarters. When Giorgio, or Gianni, as he was now known, entered the interrogation room, he was calm. Almost too calm. His hair was gray now, but his eyes carried a strange, detached stillness. "Do you know why you're here?" Serena asked. He nodded slowly. "Because of the girl from the bridge." Serena leaned forward. "Her name was Elena Ferri. You worked on that bridge the week she disappeared. We found your keychain near her body." A pause, then a faint smile. "After all these years," he said, "I thought the river had kept its secret." Serena's voice hardened. "Tell me what happened." He sighed, a long, weary exhale. "She came by on her bicycle. I was working alone that morning. She stopped to ask when the road would reopen. I told her soon. She smiled and then, his voice cracked slightly. I don't know why. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was her smile. Maybe it was everything I hated about my life. I just couldn't stop myself." The room fell silent. He looked down at his hands, trembling. "I didn't mean to kill her," he said. "I just pushed. She fell. Hit her head on the concrete. There was so much blood. I panicked. I thought if I hid her, no one would know." Serena stared at him, horror mixed with pity. "You buried her in the roots of the willow?" He nodded. The river was rising. "I thought the current would take her, but it didn't. It kept her, all these years." When the confession ended, Serena stepped outside into the cold night. The bridge loomed in the distance, dark and silent, the willow tree swaying gently as if mourning. Justice had finally come, but too late for Elena, too late for her parents, too late for a town that had looked the other way. Still, somewhere in the quiet hum of the river, it felt as though she could hear a whisper, soft, almost like gratitude. The confession of Giorgio Lazzari spread through Casteldivento like wildfire. For 28 years, the town had carried Elena Ferri's name like a scar they didn't want to touch. And now, suddenly, everyone was touching it. Old wounds reopened. Whispers filled the cafes, the church pews, the small grocery on Via Roma. Everyone had an opinion. Some called it justice. Others called it too late. For Detective Serena Volpi, it was both. She watched from the back of the courtroom as Giorgio was brought in for trial. The once strong man now looked frail, swallowed by the weight of his own years and guilt. His confession had been detailed enough to end the mystery, but Italian law demanded procedure, evidence, testimony, cross-examination. And so, one final time, the story of what happened beneath the San Giusto Bridge was told to a room full of strangers who had never met Elena Ferri, but could feel her presence in every word. Pietro Ferri was there too, sitting in his wheelchair near the front row. His eyes never left Giorgio. He didn't weep, didn't speak. Only his hands trembled slightly, clutching the same photograph of Elena he had carried since 1994. black-and-white portrait of her smiling with a daisy tucked behind her ear when the prosecutor described the crime. The blow to the head, the panic, the concealment. Pietro's lips tightened. At one point, Giorgio turned toward him, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to explain, but the old man looked away. There were no words that could bridge 28 years of silence. The defense argued for mercy, that Giorgio had lived with remorse, that he was old, that it was an accident. But the prosecution reminded the court of something no one could deny. For nearly 3 decades, he had lived freely while another family had drowned in grief. He buried her, the prosecutor said, and then buried the truth with her. When the verdict came, guilty of manslaughter and concealment of a body, there was no applause. No sense of triumph, only silence. Pietro closed his eyes. Serena watched as Giorgio was led away, his head bowed. Justice had come, yes, but it felt fragile, imperfect, like a candle flickering in a storm. Outside the courthouse, rain began to fall. Serena stood under the stone archway, staring at the gray sky. Reporters shouted questions, flashes went off, microphones thrust forward. "Detective, how does it feel to solve a case after 28 years? One asked. She didn't answer. Because solved wasn't the right word. You can solve a puzzle. You can't solve grief. That summer, the Ferry family held a funeral for Elena, the one she never had. The coffin, small and white, was carried through the same narrow streets she had once biked through with flowers in her basket. People lined the roads, some out of respect, others out of guilt. The church bells tolled slowly, echoing across the valley. Serena attended quietly, standing at the back. As the priest spoke, she glanced toward the stained glass window where sunlight poured through, painting the floor in colors of blue and gold. It felt like a message, soft, peaceful, forgiving. After the ceremony, she approached Pietro. His voice was thin but calm. "You kept your promise," he told her. "You found my daughter," Serena shook her head gently. "The river found her, not me." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But you listened to what it was trying to say. The following week, workers restored the San Giusto Bridge. The willow tree that had once guarded Elena's grave was cut down, its roots too damaged by the excavation. But before it was removed, Serena took a small piece of its bark and placed it on Elena's grave, beside a single yellow tulip. "Rest now," she whispered. Months passed. The story of Elena Ferry faded from the headlines but lingered in the hearts of those who had lived through it. Castel di Vento changed, subtly but permanently. The townspeople no longer crossed the bridge without pausing. Some left flowers, others crossed themselves. Children no longer told ghost stories about the girl who vanished. Instead, they were told about the girl who was found, and the river that refused to forget her. For Serena, the case never truly left her. Late at night, she would reopen the file, staring at the photographs, the documents, the evidence bag with the rusted keychain. Each time she was struck by one thought: how easily the truth can hide in plain sight, how silence, whether out of fear, shame, or indifference, can bury more than any grave ever could. One evening, months after the case closed, Serena received a letter at her office. No return address. Inside was an old photograph. Elena sitting by the river, smiling, sunlight catching her hair. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "Thank you for giving her back to the world." Serena held the photo for a long time. She didn't know who had sent it, perhaps an old friend, perhaps Pietro before his health declined. But as she looked at it, she felt the weight of something lift, just slightly. In October of that year, as autumn painted the valley in red and gold, Serena visited the bridge one last time. The water below ran calm and clear. A new plaque had been installed on the stone railing. It read, "In memory of Elena Ferry, 1972-1994. The river kept your secret until the world was ready to listen." A soft wind rustled through the reeds, and for a moment it almost sounded like laughter, light, distant, familiar. Serena closed her eyes and smiled. Justice, she realized, isn't always about punishment. Sometimes It's simply about being remembered. Because in the end, Elena Ferry wasn't just a name on a file or a face on a missing poster. She was a daughter, a friend, a dreamer. And now her story had finally been told, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder of what happens when the truth refuses to die. As Serena walked back toward her car, the church bells began to ring in the distance, slow, steady, beautiful. She turned one last time to look at the bridge. The river glistened in the afternoon sun, carrying fallen leaves toward the horizon, and for the first time in 28 years, Castel di Vento felt at peace.